If you literally look at the survey, what's the first thing that jumps into your mind about what it looked like when you first came here and what it looks like today?
Wow, this is probably one of the biggest improvements for KGS. We were stuck in old dormitory buildings, literally called the Old Quadrangle. There was one of our members back in the 80s who claimed his office for KGS was the same room he lived in as a student in the 40s. He claimed. I don't know if that's true or not, but it made a good story. The quality of the building we have now and what's here, the laboratories, the spaces that we have for everything from working on cores and samples to offices and everything just improved KGS tremendously. And we've got Don Haney to thank for that.
What do you consider your legacy to be? What things happened that you're proudest of in terms of just things that are here now?
Yeah, you know, when you go back and read the brief description of all the previous surveys, the number one thing they all used as a indication of how productive they were is the number of publications. That goes all the way back to the very first survey, you know, produced a few what they called back then volumes, the old traditional volumes. Well, we have produced more than 400 new titles. We produced a series of 120 county water maps, another series of 120 county land use geology maps, and then about 270 other publications ranging from karst, and sinkholes, and water quality, coal resources, seismic and earthquake hazards. When you look at the variety and the numbers, I hope people in the future will look back and say those guys were busy. They did what they should have done. So that's a big one. But perhaps where we rose the highest, and it wasn't me, it was the people working here who did it. The system that we have to get online, find a map, plot points on that map, get extra information about your map, whether you're an oil and gas driller, a coal person, a limestone person, or you're developing an industrial park. You have to know where all the water wells are, where all of the resources are that has to be dealt with. So I think where we rose above all the other 50 state surveys was in our web and our data distribution system.
And that data encompasses essentially all the resources of Kentucky, doesn't it?
It does.
When you're talking water, coal, oil, gas,
And
so much
land.
more. Yeah.
And hazards and things like, you know, landslide hazards, seismic hazards, and sinkhole hazards that people should and need to know about before they make big changes to the landscape.
What are your hopes for the future of the survey? What do you hope that the survey will continue doing or venture into that you haven't been able to do here yet?
Well, I think we've spent at least a decade or more organizing and producing data, and it sounds like a relatively simple thing, but when you're talking about terabytes and terabytes of information that must be perfectly accurate in its location, in what it is, and how it was measured, and who measured it, and when it, all those metadata prescriptions that have to be perfect. It's not easy. Now I think that the surveys of the future need to go back into the field in mapping and in water monitoring and in collecting data that will add to those databases to ensure that we're up to date with the best possible data.
That data and the fact that we're on this campus among other research institutes brings up the question of, I think we've talked about before, relevance. How do you think the survey has kept itself relevant to Kentucky?
Well, that's a great question. It's going to take some thought. You know, I believe it's a constant war out there to be sure people know about you, people understand you, people know what contributions you're making. I've always kind of set up a scenario where you stand at the entrance to the grocery store in a little kiosk and you start taking a poll of people coming in and out of the grocery store. Do you know about your geological survey? I'm always afraid of the answer. But there is a large engineering and consulting community in Kentucky that certainly does know. They virtually live on our website. So I think our relevance is proven by the amount of data we distribute. It may not be to the person going into Kroger, but it certainly is to that engineering firm, that foundation firm, to those design companies, to the highway people, to the water well people. They live and breathe with our information, and we get enormous number of letters thanking us for how easy it is to get our data, how useful they find our data, especially those consultants and engineers who work in a variety of states. And they always say that the Kentucky Geological Survey has absolutely the best system they've ever seen. So I'm proud of that.